As someone who's had $30,000 of debt not once but twice in their life, I know firsthand how it is to live paycheck to paycheck, being tied to a job that you don't like but stay just because you gotta make sure your bills are paid each month. But with discipline and education, I was able to rid myself of this financial burden of consumer debt. That's why in this video, I'm going to share with you middle-class habits that keep you living paycheck to paycheck and how to break free from the struggle. So the first habit is not getting what you're worth, right? And I think one of the most common mistakes that we tend to make, especially when it comes to our 9-to-5 jobs, is not making sure that we're being valued as employees, right? And for whatever reason, maybe it's because of lack of confidence, or maybe we're just content with where we are at our position. We don't tend to try to get what we're worth. And let's be honest, like employers, they're not afraid to just give us the bare minimum, right? Like any way they can mitigate costs, and not have to pay you exactly what you're worth, they'll do that. And the reason why they do that is because obviously they'll give you just enough to make sure you don't quit. So the question you got to ask yourself is why aren't we asking more of ourselves? Why aren't we getting what we value, right? And especially many times that's probably the best option, right? Many times, let's say for a lot of people that if you feel like you're not getting valued at your job, what you can do is just explore other options. And what you'll find is, especially for a lot of people that leave one company to another, they'll find that they'll get more, anywhere from 10 to 20% more than what they were getting at their previous jobs. But for some reason, we tend to just be content with what we're doing. Maybe we just don't want to rock the boat and ask for a pay raise. And even if we get that pay raise, let's be real, sometimes it'd be 1, 2, 3%, and it doesn't even keep up with inflation. So sometimes you got to get out the habit of saying, you know what, we have to make sure that we're getting value, we're making sure that we're getting what we're worth. And if the opportunity comes where we have to explore other options, other companies, then we have to do that. And of course, this is obviously if you're someone that adds value, right? If you're someone that believes they add value to a company and you're bringing value to that company and you feel like you deserve, you're worth more than what you're getting, then it is a good time to explore that option. But obviously, when you get to a point where you're not doing it too often, right? You don't want to be jumping from company to company, because companies see that and they say, all right, you're not a loyal person. But if you feel like you're at a company and you feel like you're not being valued, getting what you're worth, then it's okay to be you know what, let me explore what's other different options out there and see what kind of increase in pay I'll get, because you never know. It could be a substantial amount. It happens all the time. People leave all the time and they find out they're getting 10 to 20% more than what they're doing at their other company. And the reason why it's important to make sure that we get what we're valued, because this additional income can provide additional funds for investments and alternative source of income. So make sure you're getting what you're worth. So the second habit is lifestyle creep, right? And let's be honest, we're all a victim to this, right? So once we get that first job, right, what's the first thing that we do? Especially when you're coming out of college and you get that first full-time job where you're getting a decent pay, what's the first thing that we tend to do, right? We often try to upgrade our possessions and beyond what we can afford, right? Because usually that first area we upgrade is what? That new car, right? Because we want that car to match our new job, right? We're like, you know what, I got this new job, I got a new source of income coming in. Now it's time to upgrade my car and add another expense, right? And usually what we'll do is either get a lease or we'll obviously finance the car, right? And we'll obviously add another additional expense to our life. And obviously this gets us in trouble because we tend to buy more car than we need, right? And obviously long term, this can be a hindrance to when it comes to building wealth long term. Typically the rule of thumb when it comes to buying a car is that you shouldn't be spending no more than 15% of your annual gross income, right? And that's including obviously car payments, the insurance and maintenance. But obviously we tend to go a little bit more than that and buy more car than we actually need. Now the second area of upgrade along with that car is the home, right? We got a new job, so you know what? We got to get a new home, new space, larger space, our own space, and our privacy. So what happens is we look at the mortgage and say, okay, we can afford that, but a lot of times a lot of people don't factor in everything else that comes with it outside of the mortgage, which is furniture, right? Kitchen appliances, TVs, right? And then also maintenance of the home. So we tend to not really include all the other factors when it comes to buying a home, and we tend to buy a home that more home than we can afford. So this all comes with when it comes to having that job, right? You make more money, so you want more things. So these are things that we got to factor in and be careful of when it comes to building wealth. So the third habit is relying on only one source of income, right? And for me, that's a really risky thing to do. As you can see, during the pandemic, man, a lot of people lost their jobs, right? And that was for a lot of people that was their only source of income. And you see a lot of people getting, even today, you've seen so many people getting laid off where they only have one source of income, and they're depending solely on that income, right? And for me, that's such a risky thing. Like, you should be trying to find ways to create multiple sources of income, right? And break free and find a way to diversify your income, whether it's starting an online business, getting a second job, getting a side hustle, whatever it is that you got to do to create multiple sources of income. So, and you're probably thinking like, oh man, I don't have time to get a second job or anything like that. But I mean, you can't afford not to, right? And if you start an online business, right, get in investments, investing in real estate, investing in stocks, like find ways to create more income. Like relying on one source of income is dangerous. And I know for a lot of people, like starting a business can be a scary thing. But I look at it as scary that, you know, depending on somebody else for my income, that's scary enough for me. Because once I get that business up and running, or if I'm self-employed, I have control over my income, of how I control my financial situation. With an employer, like if you're not beating if their bottom line is affected, then what they're gonna do, especially you see today, is they're gonna lay people off. They're gonna let people go just so they can meet their bottom line. So I know a lot of people see job security when it comes to these 9-to-5 jobs, but you have to think of it that you have no control over that situation. They determine like if you have income coming in or not. So I like to take the proactive approach and like try to create my own financial situation. So relying on one source of income, any way you got to do it, you got to figure out ways to create multiple sources of income. So the next habit is not preparing for retirement, right? And obviously, this is a problem that we all have. Like when we're in our youth, right, in our 20s, we're like, you know, I'm not worried about retiring in the 60s. Like that's a long time away. Like once I get to my 30s and 40s, then I'll probably start thinking about it. But then by that time, it's not saying that it's too late, but there's so much opportunities that you missed during your 20s where you could have been building wealth long term. And I think for a lot of people, we need to start getting into that habit of taking our retirement serious. Like maybe, yeah, we don't have to worry about it concerning too much, but we need to start preparing ourselves and start putting ourselves in a situation where we're building wealth over time. So when it does come time for us to retire, we're put in a situation where we don't have to rely on things like Social Security or some type of government program where that's going to help us get through day by day. So I think it's for a lot of people, we have to create that mindset of making sure that we're taking control over our finances long term, because that's not focusing on retirement, even though you're in your youth, can be dangerous, because you know you hit your 60s, man. Those 60s come pretty quick. Like I'm not 60 yet, but time goes probably pretty quick. So we need to start making sure that we start preparing ourselves and putting ourselves in situations that we're getting investments. Whether like if you're having an employer, obviously they probably have some like retirement account that you can invest in, whether it's a 401k. Obviously you should be in that, maxing it out and making sure that your company also matches that with you. And then there's also Roth IRAs that you can invest in as well. But even still, then you still should be doing things like investing in stocks, right? And you're probably thinking, you know, oh man, stocks are too complicated. And no, you're probably right. It does require research, but there are also different alternatives that you can get into, like index funds and ETFs, which don't require so much knowledge. It requires a little bit of knowledge because you want to make sure you understand what you're getting into, but it doesn't require the extensive knowledge that it takes for like researching stocks, individual stocks. So there's so many different avenues that in which you can, you know, focus on your retirement and passive ways you can do, where you can just, you know, every month just put money into your retirement account, so when you are ready to retire, you have something to fall back on, because obviously when we get older we have less energy to work, and we need to understand that, right? We're not going to be working all the way up to our 80s at the same level that we are in our 20s. So you want to make sure that as you get older, you're preparing yourself to make sure that when it comes to the time for you to retire, that you do have a nest egg to fall back on. So the next habit is consumption versus production, right? So if someone is struggling financially, like it usually comes down to their level of consumption versus production, right? Like more than likely they're consuming things like obviously TVs, cars, and credit card debt at a much faster pace than they're generating income, right? Through labor. So in order to improve our financial well-being, we need to make sure that we're reducing our consumption and increasing our production, right? Our income. Because I think in the United States I think the average American has like $96,000 of debt, and I think in UK it's like 33 pounds. So clearly, like money is leaving quicker than it is coming in, and that's an issue, right? So we need to understand how this negatively impacts our financial situation. We need to make sure that we're changing that, and by reducing our consumption and increasing our production, we can make sure that we have a better financial future. So the next habit that's keeping you living paycheck to paycheck is ignoring financial literacy, right? And I think we have a tendency to prioritize things like mental health, physical well-being, but we sometimes neglect our financial well-being, right? And there's a good reason for that. Like this, a lot of us are not taught this when we were younger, right? But I think now, if you're in your 30s and 40s, then there's really no excuse. Like, 'cause there's so much out there, whether it's through a books, or obviously YouTube videos, or there's just so much ways to get this knowledge and information, right? There's really no excuse not to be learning these things, and it's important because we need to understand like the basic fundamentals, especially when it comes to just tax rules or just managing incomes and expenses. Like these are things that we should know, and obviously we're not taught in school, because ignoring these financial literacy is like, it leads to a continual cycle of like relying on working solely for money, right? And because of this lack of knowledge, we're like, you know what, I need the money, right? I need to keep working because I need money, right? Instead of like figuring out how to, instead of work for our money, we had to figure out ways how to make money work for us. And these are things that we're not taught. And because, and if you, and having this lack of financial literacy is way more expensive, right? It's very costly, especially long-term for our financial future. So it saves us a lot of money and teaches us how to, learning this stuff and building our financial literacy is going to help you build wealth long-term. And developing that financial knowledge is crucial for enjoying a fulfilling life. Finally, herd mentality, right? In today's society, like there's so much pressure to want to like fit in, right? Like fit in and have people like us, that it causes us to spend a lot more money than we should, right? And it goes across all level of incomes, whether you make 20,000, 50,000, if you're a six-figure earner. This sort of pressure causes us to spend more than we actually make, and it keeps us living paycheck to paycheck. But when it comes to the middle class, because let's be real, people that have a lot of money, they have a lot larger margin for error. They can consume more. But if you're someone in the middle class, this is gonna affect your wealth building strategy negatively, right? It's going to have a huge impact on it. So I think for us, we need to change how we value consuming things, right? We need to change what matters to us most, right? Which is our financial goals, right? And less about these status-driven material things. Like we need to get away from that kind of mentality, because we're trying to impress people that we don't know, that we don't even really care about. It's not going to lead us to a good financial situation long term. So I think for a lot of people, it's like understanding our goals, understanding our values is what's going to get us to where we want to go financially, and making sure that we understand that and make sure that we make building wealth as a primary focus, instead of like trying to impress other people. And once we do that, once we make that the focus, then I think for a lot of people, we'll be in a better financial situation. So that's all I got for you guys today. If you got any comments or questions, make sure to leave it down below. Hit the like button and share. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe. All right. So you guys take care. Have a good one. Later.